the country of Russia is having its official next presidential election very soon, in March of 2024. And yes, even though right now Russia is more authoritarian than it's ever been, and even though any criticism of the government is basically outlawed, believe it or not, Russia is still having elections. Vladimir Putin has already, of course, announced his candidacy.
Я буду баллотироваться в должность президента Российской Федерации.
And looking at how elections in Russia go down usually, with sounds of voter fraud and falsifications, I guess it's kinda easy to guess who's gonna win. However, despite all of this, the Russian election keeps getting more interesting, because we're actually getting new candidates that oppose the war in Ukraine. In one of my previous videos, I talked about Duntsova, a local Russian politician and journalist from rural Russia that announced that she would like to run for president of Russia in 2024. And her main ideas were to democratize Russia, to free the political prisoners, and also to stop Russia's special military operation. And essentially what ended up happening is that Duntsova officially applied to the Russian Central Election Committee and was denied registration as a candidate because of supposedly some mistakes in her documents.
Катерина Сергеевна, вы молодая женщина, у вас все еще впереди. Любой минус всегда можно перевести в плюс.
So yes, that's pretty much where the campaign of the only anti-war candidate in the Russian election ended. And even though it might seem like there's no more hope for Russia, don't you fret guys, because a new Russian election candidate has just dropped. Oh, and he's also supported by Duntsova herself. What is up guys, it is your boy Roman, your favorite neighborhood Russian. How you guys doing today? And in today's video, we're gonna be talking about a new opposition candidate in Russia who is also currently trying to run for president, and his name is Boris Nadezhdin.
Я принял решение участвовать в выборах президента, потому что я хочу другого будущего для нашей страны. Я хочу, чтобы Россия была мирной и свободной страной.
Who is this mysterious man that is brave enough to take on Vladimir Putin? Essentially, Boris Nadezhdin is a businessman and a local politician from Moscow, in particular in the town of Dolgoprudny in the Moscow region. He's actually had history in Russian politics, and was a member of the Russian Parliament's Russian State Duma in the early 2000s as a member of the party the Union of Right Forces, which was a center-right opposition party in the start of the 2000s in Russia, which among its leaders actually had Boris Nemtsov, for example, the famous Russian opposition politician who was actually murdered in 2014 via very strange circumstances right next to the Kremlin in Moscow. And actually throughout the years, Boris Nadezhdin was described as a very strong ally and a close friend of Boris Nemtsov. And in the last few years, essentially, Nadezhdin mostly focused on local politics and also observing Russian elections in an attempt to make them more fair. Nadezhdin also makes pretty frequent appearances on Russian TV and actually voices anti-Putin, anti-war points of view straight off the podium of Russian propaganda. Because believe it or not, Russia, with all its censorship, actually does like to invite certain liberal voices to their propaganda shows, essentially to just show them off as ridiculous so that everybody in the studio gets to sort of scream over them and say that they're traitors of Russia, etc, etc. However, Boris Nadezhdin in his appearances on Russian TV has actually said some things that are very critical of the Russian government.
Теперь становится ясно, и даже по самому Путину это видно, насколько катастрофической ошибкой было само решение начальника.
Это только вам становится пока ясно, Борис.
And I guess in general the fact that a person is able to at least voice one coherent decent thought that could go out to the viewers of Russian propaganda, I don't think that's too bad personally. And essentially in October of 2023, Boris Nadezhdin announced that he would actually like to run for presidency of Russia. So here we have Nadezhdin 2024, and down here we can see that he essentially needs to get 100,000 signatures so that he can actually apply to be a candidate, and we have 85,000 signatures left to go. So let's check out his manifesto. Why am I participating in the presidential election? I'm taking part in this election as a principled opposer of the policy of the current president. Putin sees a world of the past, and he's trying to bring Russia to the past. Russia needs the future of a country that is going to be an example, a country that free and educated people would like to return to or move to. For almost 25 years, Vladimir Putin has been destroying the main institutes of a modern government. An independent parliaments, independent courts, federalism, local governments, freedom of speech, honest elections, as well as real competition in economics and politics. Vladimir Putin has made a fatal mistake starting the special military operation. Now be careful there, buddies, you can't say that these days, None of the announced goals of the special military operation have been fulfilled, and it cannot be done without massive damage to the economy and an irreparable hit to the Блять! And an irreparable hit to the demographics of Russia. Instead of being a European nation that it wanted to be for hundreds of years, Russia is risking turning into a vassal of China. So yeah, much like when we checked out Duntsova's campaign, you know, pretty good stuff once again. Pretty brave things to say for anybody in Russia. Not just a politician, but anybody. I'm telling you guys, people in Russia have been jailed for less than this. But yes, Boris Nadezhdin is also currently organizing his whole campaign, and is also trying to get registered as an actual candidate. Another interesting thing, by the way, is actually here, in Tbilisi, Georgia, where I live, they have organized a place to leave signatures for this guy. And that's pretty smart, actually, because a ton of Russians who are, you know, liberal-minded, who don't like Putin, a ton of us went to Georgia and a ton of us are here, so it's kinda logical. Very good thinking. And actually, like I already mentioned, even Ekaterina Duntsova, that Russian lady that was trying to run for president as a anti-war candidate, she's actually also voiced her support for Boris Nadezhdin and said that it's a great idea for her followers and her supporters to also support Boris Nadezhdin as well. So that is also actually pretty interesting and nice to see for a change that the liberal and oppositional forces of Russia actually know how to unite for once and not just shit on each other. And actually a lot of other famed Russian oppositional leaders, such as Mikhail Khodorkovsky, Maxim Katz, they've also voiced their support for Nadezhdin and essentially said that just the idea of having an anti-war candidate is pretty much everything we need in Russia.
Если Борис Надеждин будет зарегистрирован кандидатом в президенты, у нас в бюллетене может появиться антивоенный кандидат наших взглядов. Но шанс на это появится только если Борис Надеждин сумеет выполнить требования ЦИК и собрать необходимые для регистрации 100 тысяч подписей. Уже и не вспомнить, когда нам в последний раз удавалось хоть что-то сделать, чтобы показать режиму, что мы против. Если вам не нравится Надеждин, все равно поставьте за него подпись, потому что остальные кандидаты вам понравятся гораздо меньше. Даже если он не нравится вам идеологически, все равно поставьте, ведь важно, чтобы во время выборов был реальный выбор. Все выиграют от того, что в бюллетене будет кандидат с такими взглядами.
Again, it's really hard to say what is actually going on. Everybody out there currently has 1,000 theories. We already talked about this in the previous video how, in the last election in 2018, we had the quote-unquote liberal candidate Ksenia Sobchak, who is actually a Russian journalist and also the goddaughter of Vladimir Putin. And essentially the consensus is that she was in agreement with the Russian government back in the day to appear at the election as a sort of a liberal spoiler candidate that was there to kind of muddy the waters and show the world and show the people of Russia that actually, look, we do have liberal candidates. Yes, we didn't allow Alexei Navalny to run.
А вы молодой, перспектива хорошая, но, как говорится, все у вас еще впереди.
However, check it out, we have Ksenia Sobchak. She's like a liberal and stuff, she doesn't like Putin. Vote for her. And nobody ended up doing that because a ton of people just boycotted the election. And as a result of this, obviously right now there's a lot of theories saying that perhaps maybe Ekaterina Duntsova is a Kremlin plant, or Boris Nadezhdin, this guy could be also like a Kremlin plant.
Who's just here to, you know, make the election look more legitimate and everything.
Once again, guys, I can't know, and I do not know. All I'm saying is that from his biography, from the people that supported them, and just in general based on the things that he's been saying and on his entire campaign, I don't know, what he's saying makes a lot of sense, and myself as an anti-war Russian are more inclined to like him rather than dislike him, and I do think it would be great if like the Russian opposition could kind of unite behind somebody so that the Russian people who do not agree with what is going on could actually be able to sort of show the government that they exist and that there's a lot of people who actually disagree. And an election is one way of doing that, although once again, elections in Russia are not very well known for being honest or being, you know, trustworthy. But once again, what is the alternative? Lay down and die? And honestly, all of this just makes me feel really excited in a way, because there feels like there's something real happening. You could say that a lot of the things this guy is saying are very populist and basic, yes, but guess what? Saying these things in modern Russia is already incredibly brave. And once again, in Russia currently, a country where all the politicians that are actually in power are all just puppets and pawns, they have no opinion, no agency of their own, they're all essentially just actors pretending to be politicians. And also when you have all these influencers and celebrities that are being completely silenced, it is so refreshing to see an actual political movement that actually, yes, of course, still self-censors, still doesn't really say certain things. It's obviously not a revolutionary rhetoric or anything. And the main reason why they actually do that and use terms such as special military operation, for example, is actually because, well, you see a person who is considered a criminal cannot run for presidency. So you gotta stay within the limits to be able to run in the first place, right? However, Duntsova, Nadezhdin, the things that they're saying are already so insanely refreshing to hear because it's like nobody else in Russia even dares to say these things, you know? And that is why this entire new movements of new Russian anti-war candidates coming out is making me, you know, pretty excited. Again, realistically, do I think that Boris Nadezhdin here is even gonna be registered as a candidate? I don't know. Is he gonna win? Probably not. However, the Russian people, especially those that disagree with what their government is doing, these people deserve to have a voice and they have none. And I just really hope that people like this and movements like this will lead us to being able to show not only to our leaders but also to the rest of the world that we do see what's happening and that we do think it's kinda not okay. You know what I mean? That is just what I want, and I don't even know, guys. I've lived under Putin my entire life and it basically feels like a myth at this point that anybody could be president except this guy. But who knows, guys? History is very interesting and what can I say? I'm very, very excited to be living through it. Anyways, guys, I guess that is going to be pretty much it for today's video. What do you guys think about this guy? Is he real? Is he legit? Does he have any chances? I want to see your very thoughtful political analysis in the comments. And yeah, I guess that is going to be pretty much it for today's video. And I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.